Hello, everybody. Namaste. Welcome, beautiful souls. Welcome back to this journey through the Tarot de Marseille. And today we're going to look at the La Papesse through several different decks, talk about the symbols, the history of the card, um, just some nuances, and the journey of the Papesse through to more contemporary decks. And I've really enjoyed just the last couple of days as I have been preparing for this episode and just comparing decks. And one of the things I'm really intrigued with is the drape, the curtain that is behind the papesse. You can see it in the central card here, which is the soprafino. This is the Il Menengello version. And on the far left is the Noble. This version of the Noble is a Fleur Noir version, restoration by Fleur Noir. And how did this curtain become a full drape and a veil in contemporary decks? I would love to. It's like the veil was lowered. I was just looking at the Crowley deck as well too, that puts the veil to the foreground, and I think that's so fascinating. Yeah. Anyway, welcome. Hello, I'm Sadhana, and I've been reading for a long time, but Marseille is not my area of expertise by any means. And I decided to commit 2024 to having a better look at these cards and seeing if I might incorporate more Tarot de Marseille or these sorts of decks into my readings. And it's my pleasure to guide these discussions. And I really have been enjoying your support and expertise in these discussions as well too. So welcome to Arya. Namaste to you. All right, on the far left is, like I said, the Noble, and center is the Soprafino, and on the far right is a deck that I did a walkthrough of not too long ago. It is a Bolognese deck. It is called the oh my goodness, Tarot Fine dalla Torre. And I think I will do a side by side with the Soprafino. There's just something about the texture of the paper and the cards that is calling out to do a side by side. So you can look forward to that in the not too distant future. Good evening to Dee, and welcome from the UK. And Kristen, namaste. Yes. So, where to begin? Where to begin? And of course, I do want to talk about the egg. That is very much a part of the discussion in Jodorowsky's deck. So, lots of bits and pieces to put together. I really also enjoyed the quick historical review. Many of you have this book as well too, The Untold Tarot by Kathleen Matthews, and this one reviews the possibility of the Papesse being either inspired by Pope Joan or Sister Manfreda. And whether we associate this card with a historical reference. I also want to share with you the little bit from the Fleur Noir book as well too, because that's kind of interesting. Or we read the energy of the card as holding space of inner knowledge and one's ability to, as Camellia Elias says, zen out. I think we have a wide range of possible interpretations here. Something that I had completely forgotten about. Oh, Lydia, namaste, welcome, and welcome to Kristen as well too. Completely forgotten about was the shift of energy from Earth to her contemporary translation, which is water energy, lunar energy. And I think that is might be a really good place to start. In the Fleur Noire little booklet, he says that the Papesse is the grandmother, the first adult model encountered by the infant. The way that I need to go back actually and reread his book, Seeing the World Through the Tarot, something like that, because those interpretations of the cards are so different and full of insight into a time and a culture that is not now. But he talks about a different version of this archetype of the Papesse. And it reminds me, and as soon as you said that about Indian deity, I'm thinking about, so the idea with this archetype as the grandmother was the grandmother looked after children when they were young, so the mother didn't become too attached because infant mortality was more common in those days. And so I'm also just drawing a line between cultures that don't let infants touch the ground until a certain age. To keep them pure, cleaner, right? And this is really funny and random, but how is all of this connected? How are we both spirit and earth? And of course, this makes perfect sense with all the more contemporary esoteric assignments to this card and the connecting of as above, so below, and that central channel that we all use for our intuition and leaning into spirit. So, okay, I have more questions than I have answers today. I want to go back to the drape and the curtain that is behind, and curtains in general, maybe curtains in the tarot. And in some decks, it is not so clear what it is. And I have this image of, I mentioned this the other day. I was seeing a papesse, or maybe it was one of the queens, and I was imagining some elaborate boning coming out of the back of the costume, and then the fabric was secured on the boning behind to create this curtain, this highly elaborate veil. It's just the way that it is illustrated in these cards. I feel like it's these ones, it doesn't look like it though. These ones, it looks like it's been raised, and it's not. Maybe it could come down to the ground and create a curtain that touches the floor. I don't know. What do you think about this? Because it has a different energy, and I know it represents the same sort of thing that we see in the Wade Smith tarot, or even the veil that is in the foreground of the Crowley tarot. And yet it's more tangible. It's a piece of fabric that is there. So, and it is, look in the Soprafino and in this card, it matches, and I know there is a limited color palette to the Tarot de Marseille on the older decks, but it so clearly matches the energy of the High Priestess in the foreground. In this older deck here, we do not see a veil. And the High Priestess is, it looks to me like she is of the sun and the moon, and not of the earth. Another question would be, and I know Camellia Elias questions her connection to the way that she words it. I know she mentions the urinary tract, but I'm thinking in general the second chakra. And I find that interesting that she mentions the water element when the older books refer to the element of earth. And so part of this journey for me is being open to the shifting energy of many of these cards. And this has definitely been a part of, and I know we're not looking at minor arcana here, but the playing card journey that I am on has really brought forth so many more questions than I've ever had with the tarot before. The sheer amount of fabric that she is wrapped in, draped in, is also very different from contemporary decks, where she may be cloaked, but certainly not as elaborately as we see in the older decks. This is such an interesting it creates what does it create? It creates a border, it creates a boundary, it creates protection. It's highly symbolic. And do you know where my mind just went? My mind just went to The Wizard of Oz, the film, Behind the Curtain. And what we see behind the curtain is not what we see in front of the curtain. And I think this play on what we see and what we do not see is so important in reading the tarot. My mind is just going all over the place. I'm thinking about a contemporary Waite Smith 9 of Cups card with that elaborate curtain behind the figure in the 9 of Cups. And this, in a reading, if that is where your focus goes, is really can be really a hard question to ask. And that is more about, are you seeing things as they really are, or as you want to see them, or as you wish to see them? Perhaps you are creating this sense of separation between yourself and spirit, or yourself and another version of yourself. Curtains are, I don't know, it says powerful symbol, a powerful sign. And then look at the abundance of fabric and how cloaked, how many layers of fabric are covering the sacred vessel of the high priestess, of the Papesse. And we do see, and I don't know if, I don't imagine that this is skin that we see, but this is white fabric here. And it wouldn't surprise me too in some decks if it appears that there are gloves on her hands. And when I'm looking at this, at the Bolognese deck, it almost does appear as if she has a gloved hand. Yes. That is a really good thing to contemplate. And what happens behind the curtains is supposed to stay behind the curtains, but we all know that it doesn't. What happens behind the curtains changes us, right? It stirs something within us. it's a private place. Now, what if the high priestess is your private place to reflect upon your secrets, to reflect upon your darkness? And I've been going down many a rabbit hole, especially the last 24 hours. And of course, this card always sort of takes me to this particular high priestess from the Marielle Tarot. And I just want to share this with you. Just a couple of lines from here. Fear of darkness is one which will appear over and over. It is very natural and good fear. Children fear the dark, and it keeps them from wandering into harm while their parents sleep. Adults fear the dark, and it keeps us from situations where we are vulnerable. It colors all the symbols relating to the night, the moon, the dark, owls, bats. And because of our natural circadian rhythms, our state of mind is different at night. Our consciousness shifts closer to a dream state, and consequently, the door is opened to fantastic events and experiences. And so these curtains and these veils block the light, which allows us to look within. And isn't it within where we keep those more personal and tender issues that are more challenging to share? And then as I say all of this, no wonder this archetype is associated with the sacral chakra. This is the place of karmas and deep, dark secrets and those things that are very challenging to heal, that often are carried with us lifetime through lifetime. Now, these older decks, I don't believe their esoteric interpretation was not a part of that, but it is there, right? It's there. It's there in the ether, and it's there whether we want to discuss it or not. Dee offers that a Papesse statue is found in St. Peter's Basilica. She represents the allegorical Mother Church. She holds a book, keys, and wears the triple crown. And yes, there are several decks where the Papesse does hold a key or keys. And of course, she is the counterpart to the Pop, right? The Pope and the Popesse. La Papesse was well known in the Catholic Church. For those of you that work with the decks that have Juno and Jupiter as the Papesse and the Pope, I had another thought about this. Hierophant, right? Hierophant, the Pope, as Jupiter. Jupiter, the planet, Jupiter, the myth, Jupiter, the energy in Indian mythology, Indian astrology, is seen as the Guru chakra, the Guru planet. This is the place of our, inner wisdom. And if that is the inner masculine wisdom, then the Papesse is the feminine counterpart to that. Guru means dispeller of darkness. So perhaps she is here holding space. I was going to say holding splace for us to know our darkness, to explore our darkness. Interesting that there's no book. I can't see a book in this one. It may be open over her right knee. So why sacred texts? Why is a sacred book here in this card? And what does these sacred books represent? Many summers ago, I was at a yoga teacher training. It was really intense. It was so intense. And somewhere around 7, 8 p.m., every night we sat and we listened to our teacher read from a sacred text. And I would often nod off because it was the end of the day. We were so tired. But her intention was that in reading the sacred text, we would, it's like there's a transference of the energy, that these sacred texts are a transmission. And whether we read them in translation or whether we read them in the authentic language, they hold a special space of energy. And the Papesse is never reading the book, right? She's never looking down at the book, and I've never seen that in any card. But the book is open, and the transmission is available, and it's available through a tangible object, and I find that so reassuring and comforting that we don't have to meditate. We can be in the lines and the words of a sacred text. And that might help us to connect with our darkness, our issues, our troubles, the stuff that we are working through, to navigate secrets. Maybe even to reveal them, to nudge up against something that we don't necessarily feel too comfortable with. When I look at the Tarot Soprafino, the way that her cape opens around the book and that gold fabric is around the book, it almost looks like that gold fabric is adorning the book. It's kind of beautiful. All right, let's look at a couple of other. If you have anything about these specific decks, please feel free to chime in. I just had to bring this one out. I love that we have the black face here. I shared this story a couple of times on my channel, and it was an aha moment I had with a black client, black woman, and done lots of readings together, lots of work together. And my aha moment was that in a nutshell, that black women must know something about the sacred feminine that even white women can't understand. And when that came through, there was something that kind of cracked open within me. And I know that, and now I'm starting to wonder, you know how we say that, beauty is skin deep and color is on the skin, but it's not. It's in the DNA, it's in the history, it's in the ancestry. And so there's something really powerful about a black face being the Papesse and looking out from this card. It's really, really powerful. This card is the what card is this? This is the large deck. Right? That was the Noble. This is the Dodal. And I can zoom out just a little bit here. And then I want to put the Jodorowsky on the table and get your thoughts on the egg. So, and do you have other decks? Of course, right? So this is based on Conver that have the egg behind the priestess. And I think in contemplating the egg was why I went to pull out the Marielle and start to think about what is symbolic of the egg and what is the egg doing there. In Jodorowsky's book, he says something worthy of contemplation. And that is, I'm just going to put that back on the table while I try to finish my thought here. And I don't know if I don't have the book open. Okay, so to paraphrase, he says that unlike in numerology, where 2 is separation, duality, in the tarot, 2 is, I'm just going to get it for you because better not to paraphrase. And this has to do with that rectangle and the building of the energy 2468. And this was starting to actually make me go, it's about accumulation. It's about accumulation. That was his word. In numerology, he says 2 is about separation, duality, and in the tarot, 2 is about accumulation. 1 is potential, and 2 we begin to grow energy. And I think at some level, that is something I have known. And that also makes sense as a second chakra reference. And yet, at the same time, it is, it doesn't. It's one of these conundrums, right? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? The high priestess is sitting on an egg. You are sitting on an egg. We are sitting on an egg. The high priestess is, the Papesse is incubating something. In the Marielle card, the high priestess is, the womb is a void. The womb is symbolic of the void. The womb is symbolic of the abyss. It has potential. And maybe the egg is the same. And of course, you know, there's an explanation of it, but it's a symbol of gestation, the egg in the course of incubating. But in this case, it's empty. So we go from a 1 of pure potential to the space in which to create the egg, the space in which to create something. Okay, so let's go to Dee's comment. The fabric in the soprafino surrounding the book takes on an egg-like shape or an arched doorway. That's so interesting. And if you look at the two decks on either side of the Soprafino now, particularly in the Dodal, again, we have a gold, something gold protecting the book. And also notice the level that the book is at and where the book is. It's at the level of the womb. Have you ever thought about that before? Wow. Okay. We don't see the Papesse's feet. Does that mean something? Because I know in some cards, you know how you see like one foot sticking out underneath, or like a toe sticking out underneath the fabric? In this case, her feet are completely covered. And who said, Lydianne said something about Indian deity. And I'm thinking about how feet are revered. You know how you bow down and you kiss the feet of mother, you kiss the feet of the guru, but here the feet are covered. We don't see them. I'm not sure what I might read into that. In the Gassman Tarot, we have something quite similar. This is the Gassman on the left. This is the now, this deck that I've been sharing through this whole series, this one is the Rivsaltes, Rivsalt. And I wonder, this one is based on Payen, and I would love to do a side-by-side of this deck with the Payen deck, which I don't have yet. And I find it intriguing how this one introduces the blue colors. I just noticed that La Papesse in the New Choice Tarot has an egg in a small cup next to her, just like the Jodorowsky. Oh, interesting. Okay, I don't have that one handy, so I can't pull it out, but thank you for that, Aria. The Sacred Writing Project. The sacred writing protects the ovaries full of potential that will never come into being. Now, isn't that an interesting thought? I mean, there's different versions of the Pope Joan story, but she did, in some versions of the story, become pregnant. That was revealed, and that was her end. I told you my story, right? My high priestess story. I mean, it's kind of an awful story, and it was shared with me with a reader, and it's part of my past life journey, and I was a dancer, not necessarily a high priestess. She saw me as a dancer in a temple, fully adorned, and I became pregnant, and of course that was a no-no. That wasn't allowed. I was supposed to be virginal. And I came out into the temple one morning, and my baby was lying dead on the altar. And of course, in the reading, we looked at this scenario from a few different, not during the reading because it was a download, but afterwards, really sort of it had a huge impact on me at that time. But I think about that from time to time when I think about the idea of the curtain and what we see and what we don't see, and the life we do and the life we see and the life we don't see, and how this has become very in contemporary culture. I think about gurus who have fallen, you know, because they've had relations with many of their followers, or priests, the same sort of thing. And I imagine as a priestess, that same sort of thing is possible. So there's, I think, rather than judging it morally, I think this is a wandering of, not a wondering, a wandering of a soul. I don't know where I want to go with this, but how we present ourselves and how we explore life privately behind the curtain could be something that is an integral part of an interpretation when this card comes up in a reading. And I wonder if she protects you. I wonder if she is your guardian. And, okay, what if she is your gatekeeper? Um, hmm. And yet go back to the confessional notion, right? As Dee mentioned, the curtains around the confessional. Once we go into the confessional and we release that energy, we are forever changed. And as we come out, say the Hail Marys, the penance, do the penance, there's something that shifts within us. And so it's almost as if she gives us permission to reveal ourselves or to know ourselves. And that really connects with me when I go back to, okay, Juno and Jupiter. Jupiter, guru planet. Juno, counterpart, female version of this. Sacred feminine version of this. And then I look at this card and I go, all right, that just really resonates with me. So why was it necessary to introduce the black and white pillars and bring those forward as such an important symbol in contemporary decks when there is almost more with less, if that makes sense? And I can, you know, we can kind of see the pillars in this card, and I know this is not a Marseille deck, but I'm kind of glad they're not, you don't have to see them there. They're not forefront. Okay, just had another idea. So let's go back to the Fine della Torre. This much older deck has perhaps the two pillars, the sun and the moon. Mhm. She offers forgiveness, but do we accept it and go and do not sin again? Well, perhaps that energy, Dee, becomes, of course we sin again. We're on a human journey. Of course we sin again. And I guess that depends on your definition of sin and how you see sin, but it's not sin the exploration of this spiritual being walking a human life, walking a human experience. Mm. Okay. Well, if you have other High Priestess cards that do things a little differently, would you please come back and let me know? Because I would love to look at them. And I'm just seeing something else in this card here. And I'm not sure what that is. What is this? I guess, okay, so look at this card. The, what do you call it? The edging, the trim, the piping, the on the bottom of the curtain here is green and white. It's gold and gold. And here it's sort of turned inside out. I don't know. Sometimes we read too much into little details, but just noticed that it looked very strange in the Gassman Tarot here. So if you have another version of the Gassman, maybe you can leave a comment about that. That would be great. Okay, so I have two side-by-sides planned coming up. One is to look at the Soprafino side by side with the Fine della Torre. And I know they are such very different sizes of cards, but there's just something calling to me to look at them side by side. I really want to do that. And then I'm just really enjoying this paper. I'm going to pull out La Corte de Cherokee. And because the La Corte de Cherokee, this one, is such a mix of energy. I want to look at it side by side with, and I'm going to look at it with Jodorowsky's deck. So we can kind of have a look at that deck through a different lens. And I'm going to offer these, hopefully, both of them next week, and hopefully as well to have time to look at the Empress card. So I'm going to fill up my next Saturday, maybe with 2, maybe 3 broadcasts. La Papesse is Holy Mother Church, Isis, while Black Madonna is Mother Newt, Night Sky. I need to sit with that. Yeah, the symbology is, and I guess where, depending on the culture, the religion, the what your background is, the amount of reading that you have done and the research that you've done, we have light and dark both feminine and both masculine. And in some cultures and some teachings, the black is feminine and the light is masculine. And in others, it's opposite. And I think regardless of the mythology, Hello, Paula. Welcome. Regardless of the mythology, I think just acknowledging that both are is um, there there are multiple aspects of the Divine Mother, as there are multiple aspects of the Divine Father, and maybe we need to take out the mother and father and just talk about divine. And that is presented in so many different ways in the tarot and in the Waite Smith High Priestess, other contemporary decks. That question is brought to the forefront with those two pillars. Paula offers, the Maria Celia has a brocade-like rope closing her cape and crossing her chest, or is it restricting her arms? Wow, that is a really good question. I don't have that deck handy, but as I read that, I'm thinking arms, hands, heart. And is that restricting her heart? Look at this deck, how she has a jewel at her heart. In this deck, we also have fabric crossing at her heart. Wow, okay, so that is another something else to look at in your decks. Don't see it, well, a little bit here. Just a little, we see a little bit of her belly, perhaps, and the plain fabric underneath. And here we have the blue crossing. So interesting. Thank you for that, Paula. Okay. All right, my friends, lots of questions, and have fun diving into this card. And I will see you next weekend. Take good care of yourselves. Namaste. Appreciate all of your comments.